I want to thank Republican congressmen and women because what they did is incredible last night. And the Senate, the Republican Senate, we got, not with all of the things we did with the tax cuts and rebuilding our military, not one Democrat voted for us. And I think we use it in the campaign that's coming up, the midterms, because we got to beat them. But all of the things that we've given, and they wouldn't vote only because they hate Trump. But I hate them too, you know that? So it's sort of, I really do, I hate them. I cannot stand them because I really believe they hate our country. You want to know the truth?
So that was the sitting president of the United States telling a crowd of supporters in Iowa that he openly hates the opposition party, the Democratic Party. And equally disturbingly, that crowd of MAGA supporters celebrated Trump saying that. Now, you might say, well, he's just referring to Democratic lawmakers. But I would say that's still really bad and really dangerous, especially when you consider that 2 weeks before Trump said these things, 2 Democratic lawmakers and their spouses were shot by a deranged Trump voter in Minnesota, and one of the couples died. They were murdered. But you could also make the case that Trump is actually expressing hatred for anyone who disagrees with him, including Democratic voters and constituents. And it was because of those Democratic voters and constituents that the lawmakers opposed Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. This is extraordinary. This is hostility and hatred coming from a sitting president, the likes of which we have never seen, certainly not from a Democratic politician or a Democratic president, and we have to talk about that. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, again, that's Donald Trump speaking in Iowa, and we're probably going to do a separate video about that speech, which was supposed to commemorate the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, right? Because he said a lot of unhinged, stupid shit in that speech. But in this video, I want to focus on 2 specific instances in that speech where Trump expressed extraordinary hatred, even by his standards. One was the clip I just showed you. Another clip is him using an anti-Semitic slur, right? We'll get to that in a moment. But focusing on Trump expressing hatred for Democrats in this country, I said, you know, the president openly telling a cheering MAGA crowd that he hates Democrats 2 weeks after a Trump voter shot 2 Democrats and their spouses, murdering 1 couple. Trump is worse than any Democrat. MAGA loves him for it, but they'd be furious if the situation was reversed. If there was a Democratic president like President Biden or President Obama who ever uttered the phrase, I hate Republicans, if they ever said that, not only would there be sweeping condemnation from Fox News and Tim Pool and Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire and, you know, Steven Crowder, Piers Morgan, we'll get to him in a second, but also, quite frankly, from other Democrats. There is this expectation that Democrats can never express that sort of visceral contempt for the opposition, and they probably shouldn't. But Trump gets a pass. And it's not just Trump. That's the other problem. It would be bad enough if just one Republican politician, Donald Trump, the most powerful man on earth as the sitting president, if he and he alone were expressing a unique and unprecedented hatred for the opposition party. But you also have other Republican lawmakers like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has repeatedly referred to the Democratic Party, so half this country, sometimes a majority of this country, as an evil party of groomers and pedophiles. She has said that on Twitter with written text. She has said that on camera in interviews, like a 60-minute interview with Leslie Stahl. There is an atmosphere and an animating spirit of hatred in the Republican Party that no Democrat can match at all. Speaking of Piers Morgan, he didn't address this, but I tagged him in a post. I said, Piers Morgan, please tell Trump to dial down the anti-Semitism and hostile rhetoric towards Democrats, especially since two of whom were recently shot in Minnesota alongside their spouses by a deranged Trump voter targeting Democratic lawmakers. Remember, we did a video about that. And we'll get to, again, remind you of just how contemptuous Trump was of that whole situation and Democrats, even after 2 were murdered one was murdered along with their spouse, and there was attempted murder on both lawmakers and their spouses, okay? 1 couple died. But I want you to see the reaction to this. So Joe from Jers responded with, so he just told half the country he hates them. Cool. Can't say you love America if you hate half of Americans. The president of the United States proclaiming he hates half of the people in it. So fitting for a president. I can imagine the Fox News and Republican establishment being completely fine with Barack Obama saying this about them. Sean Hannity would do wall-to-wall coverage of course, he's being sarcastic. He's saying that Fox would be upset. And listen, I'm sure some of you in the comments will be like, what about when Joe Biden called Trump supporters garbage? So he was referring to one Trump supporter, the comedian who made the joke, the bigoted joke about Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans, right? He was referring to that Trump supporter's views. And then, this is how you also know Joe Biden wasn't referring to all Trump supporters, is because he went on Twitter and issued a clarifying statement saying, I am not referring to all Trump supporters. I was referring to one Trump supporter, a comedian, who said this terrible thing. If Donald Trump was trying to give a more targeted attack on a specific Democratic politician, he would clarify that. But he never clarifies his sweeping attacks on the opposition, which leads a reasonable person to believe he means them pretty straightforwardly. He wants to insult the opposition party, their lawmakers, their constituents, and their voters. You'd have a point if he said, no, guys, I'm sorry for the confusion. I didn't mean to suggest that I hate lawmakers or I hate voters and constituents. I just hate that they oppose my agenda or whatever. He's not doing that. So miss me in advance. Spare me your false equivalences because Joe Biden is objectively morally superior to Donald Trump. Joe Biden has never and would never say anything like this, nor would Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, or others. I digress. Just got to say that for a president to say he hates more than half the country on the eve of Independence Day is truly fucking disgusting. Kaivan Shroff, they blamed the fall of American democracy on Hillary saying, quote, basket of deplorables, but those same media figures won't blink twice at this. And by the way, even Hillary Clinton, she didn't refer to all Trump supporters as a basket of deplorables. She said that there was a portion of them that she would call a basket of deplorables who were Islamophobes and misogynists and racists and, bigots and neo-Nazis and things of that nature. And yes, there is a subset of Republicans and Trump supporters who are terrible people. You can find a subset of terrible people even in the Democratic Party. But Hillary Clinton was quick to clarify and careful to clarify that she was not referring to all Republicans. Again, Trump doesn't do that shit. He doesn't add those caveats. He doesn't discriminate, right? He's indiscriminate in his vicious, hostile rhetoric. And when he is the most powerful person on earth by virtue of his position, he has the highest obligation to be as inclusive and gentle as possible with respect to not saying that he hates half the country. You're supposed to be the president of the United States for as many people as possible. Now, obviously, you will have your partisan preferences because you're either a Republican president or Democratic president. I want to be clear about that. And I'm not saying that presidents can't even strongly criticize the opposing party. They're free to do so. Trump is free to criticize the Democratic Party, just as President Biden was free to criticize the Republican Party. But to say you hate the opposition party, especially in this context where Democratic lawmakers were shot just 2 weeks ago with their spouses, and to remind you, Trump was totally callous about that. As the Associated Press and others reported, Trump says he won't call Minnesota Governor Walz after lawmaker shootings because it would, quote, waste time. He repeatedly said that. He had no interest. He didn't even show up for their funeral. No expression of sympathy or empathy or compassion. He hates Democrats. He loathes them. He views them as lesser. And we have never seen that, never, from a Democratic politician. Joe Biden didn't do this. Barack Obama didn't do this. Bill Clinton didn't do this. Certainly Jimmy Carter didn't do this. This is unique to Trump, but he is making it less unique within the Republican Party. I'm old enough to remember the Republican Party pearl clutching when Hillary referred to a subset of Trump voters as a basket of deplorables. I'm waiting for them to come forward now. In celebrating the celebration of Independence Day, the president hates half of America. The current president of the United States feels comfortable stating in public that he hates roughly half the electorate. Happy 4th of July. There's my comment. And so on and so forth. He is rightly being condemned by this. But the question is, will he be called out by this or for this by Fox News, by other Republican lawmakers? You'll recall that after the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, and long afterwards, Republican lawmakers castigated and wagged their fingers at Democrats. You need to tone down the rhetoric. You need to be nice to Donald Trump. But are they going to hold Trump and themselves to the same standard? No, because it's not about civility. It's not about decorum. It's about weaponizing civility and decorum. They want the freedom. Understand this. They want the freedom to say whatever they want, whenever they want, about whomever they want, with impunity. And they don't want to have to deal with a fraction of that energy in turn. They want to be able to dish it out, but they do not want to have to take it. And that is the ultimate pathetic snowflake behavior. I don't mind verbal incivility. If Republicans want to insult Democratic politicians, that's fine. Then just don't bitch when Democrats insult Republican politicians. If you want to make fun of and disrespect Joe Biden, I get to make fun of and disrespect Donald Trump. And if that upsets you, then don't talk about Democratic politicians. Like, whatever the standard is, just be consistent. But MAGA cannot function in a consistent set of standards. Their weakness is laid bare. They have to compensate. They demand ethical, political, affirmative action where you grade them on a curve. That's what they want. And so I don't expect Fox News or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Post or the National Review or others to condemn this the way they should. And quite frankly, if anybody is to condemn it, I would expect the Wall Street Journal and the National Review before certainly Fox and certainly other Republican lawmakers. They want you to grade Trump on a curve. Now, I also said that Trump said an anti-Semitic slur here too. He did. He used the phrase Shylock, okay? I mean, I hadn't heard this one in years. This is Trump.
But if you love them or if you love somebody that you're leaving it to, think of that. No death tax, no estate tax, no going to the banks and borrowing from, in some cases, a fine banker, and in some cases, Shylocks and bad people. But they...
I was surprised. Even the crowd was silent on that one. They're like, I don't know about that, Chief. That sure seems like anti-Semitism. It is a well-known anti-Semitic slur. And again, let's look at the quotes of this. He's dusting off slurs a whole generation he's never even heard before. Representative Eric Swalwell said if the Anti-Defamation League cannot condemn this, they should pack it up. They will have zero credibility. Shylock is among the most quintessential anti-Semitic stereotypes. This is not an accident. It follows years in which Trump has normalized anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theories, and it's deeply dangerous. This miserable SOB just used the anti-Semitic term in his speech. There's no context that will make that okay. If you don't condemn him and you're Jewish, then your sellout is complete. And again, he's being called out by this, and he was actually asked about it later by reporters after the speech.
And in some cases, Shylocks and bad people.
I wanted to ask you about one of the words you used during your speech, Shylocks. That's widely viewed as an anti-Semitic phrase. Do you intend for that word to be used?
No, I've never heard it that way. To me, a Shylock is somebody that's a money lender at high rates. I've never heard it that way.
That's the anti-Semitic stereotype. That's what people are talking about in the quotes on Twitter, calling this out. I mean, this is stunning, man. Like, he is just a nexus of hatred and contempt, and it's so frustrating to see Republicans bend over backwards to pretend he's not. But there you have it. In a single speech, he not only expresses hatred for the entire opposition party, lawmakers who, again, recently have been under literal fire by Trump supporters, one murdered along with their spouse, and potentially referring to the entire Democratic Party, millions of Americans. He's also using anti-Semitic slurs in his speeches. What the hell are we doing here? And will Republicans and so-called principled conservatives call him out for this? I'm not holding my breath. But in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.